Welcome to Lessons 16 and 17, Ways to Differentiate Instruction for Diverse Learners Through Strategies and Materials. By now you're probably very familiar with this slide, how to maximize your learning. Be sure that you do follow some of the suggestions for reviewing or previewing points to ponder, recording responses, and taking notes. This will help you a great deal as you go through the PowerPoints and as you read the resources, listen to the podcasts, and watch the videos. Lesson objectives for this series of lessons: recognize ways to differentiate instruction through the arts. Analyze the IES recommendations for teaching in diverse ways to promote learning and memory. Relate the IES recommendations to those in the Common Core state standards. And compare U.S. literacy traditions to traditions in a different culture. One of the experts that you will be involved with during this series of slides is Kristen Perry. And of course, there are certainly many other experts on differentiated instruction as well. Here are some preview points to ponder. Think of various opportunities students have to learn language and literacy while engaged in the visual arts. A primary concern of teachers is that students will not retain and use information learned in class. What do you think causes forgetfulness? And what can you do perhaps to promote memory? How have you differentiated instruction for your diverse learners? The following are some things to look for as you watch a video. The video is entitled Borrowing from the Arts to Enhance Learning. It's part of an Annenberg series on the arts in every classroom. And this particular video is number 12 in the list of videos that Annenberg gives you on a menu when you open up the website that you see listed at the top of your screen. As you watch the video, look for ways that teachers use movement, drama, color, all sorts of different ways to use art to teach not only content area learning, but to teach the strands of language arts, such as vocabulary, such as listening. And so watch to see all of the different ways that children can learn. Specifically, some of the other things on this list are ways teachers ask open-ended questions. And one teacher shows you how she teaches cause and effect through movement. In the middle of the video, I would pause it from time to time and really reflect on the things that you've seen the teachers teach and think about how you could integrate some of their methods into the content that you are teaching, including the content that you are planning for your integrated thematic unit. Some of the points to ponder would be to determine the steps the teachers use to engage their students. How does the teacher create a community of learners so the students feel free to express themselves? The teacher says she thinks students remember the lesson longer, durability, than using discussion only. The next bullet challenges you perhaps to test this. Do you think students learn best when they're using movement rather than discussion? The use of movement in the videos looks like it takes a little bit of time. Is this time well spent? According to the teachers who use movement and drama and the arts, it's a resounding yes. But try this with your students and see what your results are. As you resume watching the video, look for ways that the teacher asks high-level questions of her students. Look for ways that the teacher demonstrates interest in the children's lives and the ways that she engages the students through art and oral language. It's important that the teacher emphasize purpose and importance of the lesson so the students don't just play, but that they have a real focus for their work. And you might ask yourself at the end of the video, How could you extend students' awareness that everyone has stories to tell to other people, such as their classmates have stories, historical figures have stories, scientists have stories, and so forth? So we have been talking about, and you have been viewing, instances of teachers using the arts to increase learning and the retention of learning. Next, we will be looking at an IES practice guide on organizing instruction and study to improve student learning. So this pretty much goes hand in hand with the goals of the teachers that you just saw in the video. Some points to ponder: the teacher's goals is to help students learn and then remember and apply the learning. Strategies in this practice guide provide teachers with specific ways to accomplish this goal. Recommendations include a set of actions teachers can take to aid student learning and memory. To refresh your memory, all of the recommendations in the IES practice guide are research-based, and they label the level of research as to whether it is strong, moderate, or low for each of the recommendations. All recommendations, strong, moderate, and low, have shown to be effective in the classroom. However, some have a much stronger research base than others. Recommendation 1, space learning over time. There is moderate research evidence that shows that this increases student learning and retention. By spacing learning over time, that helps students learn and retain key concepts. Delayed re-exposure to concepts increases the amount of information students remember. And by delayed re-exposure, that means if you teach something on Monday of one week, you could reteach it the following Tuesday of another week, or some space in between your lessons. You don't want to teach things one time and then move on expecting your students to have them, or to teach a unit and then move on to a different unit without ever revisiting the concepts, the vocabulary, and the skills that they had learned. These need to be shown to the students. They need to be involved with the concepts many times over time. How to carry out recommendations: use class time to review important content. Use homework as opportunities for students to have spaced practice of key skills and content. When students are reinforcing skills through their homework, this is something that they should be able to do independently because they have had it in class, rather than using homework to teach new skills and new content. Recommendation 2, interweave worked example solutions and problem solving, and this has moderate evidence. How to carry out this recommendation: intersperse solutions and answers with a list of problems or questions. Conduct small group discussions of a solution or answer to a problem or a question. When you read this recommendation in its entirety, this will give you a broader, deeper picture of what you're to do. Remember, on the PowerPoints, these are just high points of the information from this guide. Recommendation 3, combine graphics with verbal descriptions. Moderate evidence. Text descriptions appear near visual representations is one way that you can help your students learn something. Present verbal information in audio form rather than written text. Still picture sequences with text is as effective as animation. That's interesting. So if you have a series of still pictures, such as a comic, graphic novels, or a comic book type sequence of information with text, that is as effective as animation. That's surprising. I wonder why that is. How to carry out recommendation number 3. When teaching processes and procedures, combine verbal descriptions and instructions with illustrations. Use multiple representations of graphics such as symbols, graphs, pictures, real objects, and film clips. When using multiple representations, draw attention to critical features relevant to the concept, processes, or procedures. Recommendation 4. Connect and integrate abstract and concrete representations of concepts. Moderate evidence. And a lot of these different recommendations and the parts of recommendations should sound very familiar to you because you have heard them from different researchers, perhaps in different words, but the ideas are very similar or the same. When learning new terms, have students make connections to familiar objects or situations that the terms represent. In other words, have them make connections to previous learning, previous experiences that they have had. Have students apply knowledge to numerous concrete and abstract examples. And so if you can show them a concrete model of something or a concrete example, as well as abstract descriptions, they will learn the material better and hopefully for a longer period of time. Anchor new ideas in stories or scenarios that are interesting and familiar to the student. Recommendation 5. Use quizzes to promote learning. And there's low evidence for this, meaning there is not much research that supports it, but in the expert opinion of many of the researchers, this would be very useful. How to carry out this recommendation? Use pre-questions to introduce new topics. Not all quizzes have to go into the grade book, but can help you inform instruction, can help students see what they know and what they might want to learn and what they need to know. So quizzes can be used, of course, for a variety of reasons. Avoid questions that highlight unimportant information. Use quizzes before reading or oral presentations of information. Place a copy of the pre-questions on the student's desk to study and answer before the lesson begins. Now, as you all know by now, you have preview points to ponder that relate to the series of slides for these lessons. And so, in one sense, this is a recommendation that I have been following with you. Just a couple more points on recommendation 5 for using quizzes to promote learning. 5A, I just labeled them that way, use pre-questions to introduce a new topic. So within a large unit, you may want to use quizzes for various topics instead of having one quiz for an entire unit. There is low evidence that that is effective. 5B, use quizzes to re-expose students to information, and there is strong evidence to show that these quizzes help students to learn and retain information. Recommendation 6. Help students allocate study time efficiently. And there is low evidence that shows that this works. Students must be able to assess what they know and what they don't know. Use the cue system. Present questions one at a time and ask students to judge whether they know or not know the answers. Provide flashcards of definitions and facts as cues. Use the delayed keyword technique. After studying one subject, do homework for another subject. Then return to the first subject and write 4 key terms or concepts. The following are variations on recommendation 6. 6A. Teach students how to use delayed judgment of learning, techniques to identify concepts that need further study. Low evidence. 6B. Use tests and quizzes to identify content that needs to be learned. Low evidence. May be taken from seat work questions. Give immediate feedback and tell students where to look for answers. Recommendation 7. Help students build explanations by asking and answering deep questions. Strong evidence supports this recommendation. Have students think aloud. Have students explain their answers or work. Model how to think aloud. Use high-quality explanations. Give students time to think and prepare responses. Ask questions that elicit explanations. Ask questions that challenge prior beliefs and assumptions. Before we get into the points to ponder, I do want to point out to you again that when you are given a list of facts on a PowerPoint, I'm going to go through them rather rapidly, and it's up to you to go into the IES guide and to read each point in depth to get even a broader description and understanding of what you can do to fulfill the recommendations in the guide. Now, this is a very familiar points to ponder for you because it refers to the roadblocks and suggested approaches in your IES guide. Discuss the roadblocks and approaches, or at least think about the roadblocks and approaches, and relate those to the experiences that you have had as a classroom teacher. Common Core State Standards and Students with Disabilities. If you click on the website right underneath this heading, this will take you right to this portion of the Common Core State Standards where you can study it at your leisure and more in depth. Students must be challenged and prepared for post-school lives. Instruction must include supports and accommodations, including an individual education program, which is an IEP, with annual goals. Teacher and specialized supports personnel, related services, information presented in multiple ways, changes in materials and procedures, and assistive technology devices. So this is a list of things that you should include in your instruction to support students with disabilities. The Lost Boys of Sudan, Storytelling and Literacy is a very interesting podcast by Dr. Kristen Perry. It's 13 minutes and 25 seconds, and you can access it by the website underneath the title. A couple of things to point out to you as you're listening to the podcast. Dr. Kristen Perry defines literacy as the practice of reading and writing. In Sudan, students had an oral tradition of communicating information rather than a written tradition. This provided authentic purposes. If they needed to tell somebody something, it was almost always for a specific reason. They used communication as a means of advocating change. Now, thinking about teachers in the United States, we should focus on authentic reasons for literacy and oral communications as often as possible, and be sure to communicate these authentic reasons to our students. Enjoy the podcast. I hope you did enjoy the podcast on the Lost Boys of Sudan. It does give a very powerful reason for creating authentic opportunities for our students after hearing Dr. Kristen Perry. Points to ponder. Think of ways that you can create authentic opportunities for your students to share their stories. And how can you create an oral tradition in your classroom? And if you did create an oral tradition, what would your objectives be for that? What purpose would that serve?